Chris Hemsworth. You know the face, you know the arms. You know him as Thor, the god of thunder. The guy who looks like he was carved out of granite and dropped onto Earth to make the rest of us look bad. He is the golden boy of Hollywood. He anchors billion-dollar franchises, he is the face of fitness apps, and he seems to have the perfect life in Australia with his perfect family. But recently, the script flipped. While filming a show about living forever, he stared his own mortality in the face. He found out he has a rare genetic makeup that makes him 8 to 10 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. The man who plays an immortal god had to confront the very real possibility that his memories, the memories of his wife, his kids, his career, could fade away. And that's incredibly scary. It was a moment that stopped the world for a second and made us realize that behind the cape and the hammer, there is just a guy trying to figure it all out. And that is the story that we are telling today. This isn't just a highlight reel of his movies. This is the story of a kid who grew up in the Australian bush with the crocodiles and buffalo. A guy who was so broke when he got to Hollywood that he considered quitting and going back home. A man who had to fight his own little brother for the role that changed his life. This is the story of how Chris Hemsworth went from cleaning breast pumps for a living to becoming one of the highest paid actors in history. To understand Chris, you have to go way back. He wasn't born into Hollywood royalty. He was born in Melbourne, Australia in 1983. His mom was a teacher and his dad was a social services counselor. They weren't rich. In fact, money was a constant stress. Chris has talked about how one of his earliest and strongest memories is listening to his parents talk about bills. He could feel the weight on them. He remembers asking his dad when they would finally pay off the house, and his dad told him, "Honestly, we probably never will." And that stuck with him. It planted a seed. He decided right then and there that he wasn't going to be an actor for the art or for the fame. He was going to do it for the cash. He wanted to make enough money to pay off his parents' house. That was the goal. It was a noble goal, but it also put a terrifying amount of pressure on him. Every audition wasn't just about getting a part. It was about saving his family. His childhood wasn't exactly normal either. The family split their time between the city and a place called Bullman in the Northern Territory. This is the outback. We're talking red dirt, intense heat, and legitimate danger. Chris tells stories about growing up surrounded by water buffalo and crocodiles. It was a free-range childhood. He and his brothers, Luke and Liam, would just disappear into the bush for the entire day. No phones, no supervision, just 3 wild boys trying not to get eaten. And speaking of those brothers, let's talk about the dynamic there. You might think a house full of actors would be dramatic, but the Hemsworth house was a fight club. Liam Hemsworth has famously compared their childhood to the Hunger Games. They were brutal with each other. He once admitted that during a fight in the kitchen, he actually threw a knife at Chris's head. Luckily, the handle hit Chris, not the blade. But it gives you an idea of the chaos. It was a rivalry that built toughness, but it also set the stage for a major showdown later in life. Before the fame, Chris had to work. And his first jobs were about as far from movie star as you can get. He didn't start out modeling. He worked at a pharmacy. And his job there wasn't stocking shelves. His job was to clean breast pumps. Women would rent these machines and bring them back, and it was Chris's job to scrub off the dried milk with a toothbrush and spray bottle. So the next time you see him holding Stormbreaker and summoning lightning, just picture him in a pharmacy backroom with a toothbrush and a dirty breast pump. Like almost every famous Australian actor, his first real break was a soap opera. In 2004, he got cast in a show called Home and Away. He played a character named Kim Hyde. For 3 years and nearly 200 episodes, he dealt with the insane plot lines of a daytime soap. We are talking plane crashes, explosions, tornadoes, and endless relationship drama. It was a grind. You have to memorize pages and pages of dialogue every single day. There's no time to be a diva, you just do the work. But then he made a move that almost killed his career before it really started. In 2006, he joined the cast of Dancing with the Stars Australia. Yes, really. There is footage of him out there in tight shirts, trying to do the samba. And here is the thing. he wasn't very good. The judges roasted him. One of them even talked about how he had the stiffest arms they had ever seen. He was eliminated after 6 weeks. At the time, it was just a paycheck, but years later, when he was up for the role of Thor, this little dance career almost cost him everything. The big bosses at Marvel saw the footage and panicked. Kevin Feige, the head of Marvel, literally said, "Thor dancing? I don't know. The fans are gonna eat us alive." They were terrified that audiences wouldn't take a god seriously if they had seen him struggling to do the foxtrot in sequins. In 2007, Chris left the soap opera world and headed to Los Angeles. He didn't land in a mansion. He and his brother Liam moved into the guest house of Chris's manager, William Ward. They were just two Aussie kids trying to figure it out, and it did not go well. Chris hit a wall. He had a brutal dry spell where he didn't work for 8 months. He was burning through his savings, the anxiety was eating him alive. He kept thinking about his parents' debt and how he was failing them. He was getting closer and closer to packing his bags and going home. He was getting close to the big roles, which almost made it worse. He auditioned for the lead in the G.I. Joe movie. He didn't get it. Channing Tatum did. He got really close to playing the card-throwing mutant Gambit in the X-Men movies. He didn't get it. Taylor Kitsch did. At the time, he was devastated. He was running out of money and hope. But looking back, he realized that if he had gotten either of those roles, he would have been locked into a contract and never would have been available for Thor. His first moment on the big screen in America was technically a cameo, but it was a heavy one. And honestly, one of my favorite scenes in a sci-fi pop culture movie. He played George Kirk, Captain Kirk's dad, in the 2009 Star Trek movie. He is only in the movie for the first few minutes. And spoiler alert here, he dies saving his ship and his family while his son is being born. It's a short scene, but he was incredible in it. Critics called it the best 5 minutes of the movie. It proved he had that movie star presence. But a 5-minute role doesn't pay the bills forever. But then came the big one. Marvel was casting Thor. They needed a guy who was 6'3", built like a tank, and could act like a Shakespearean prince. It was a nearly impossible list of requirements. Chris auditioned, and by his own admission, he sucked.
I think my audition sucked.
He didn't get a callback, and he thought the dream was over. Meanwhile, his little brother Liam, remember the one who he threw a knife at? He sent in an audition tape, and the producers loved it. They flew Liam out to Los Angeles. He crushed the auditions. He made it all the way to the final 4 guys. Chris was back in Vancouver filming a horror movie called The Cabin in the Woods, and he was reading trade magazines that said his little brother was about to be Thor. The sibling rivalry kicked in hard. Chris wasn't mad at Liam, but he was mad at himself. He couldn't let his little brother beat him to the biggest role in Hollywood. So when the producers decided Liam was maybe a little too young for the role, being only 18 at the time, Chris's manager called them up. He said, "You know, he has an older brother." The producers were skeptical because Chris's first audition was so bad, but they agreed to look at another tape. This time, Chris didn't mess around. He was in a hotel room in Vancouver. His mom was visiting him, and she read the lines of Odin, the father character played by Anthony Hopkins in the movie. So picture this. Chris Hemsworth in a hotel room screaming dramatic lines at his mom. But this time, he had something different. He had anger. He was motivated by the fact that his little brother almost beat him. He sent the tape in, and the director saw it and said, "That's the guy." Getting the role was one thing. Becoming the character was another. Chris had to put on 20 pounds of pure muscle, and he had to do it fast. This is where the nightmare diet began. To look like a god, Chris had to eat about 4,500 calories a day. His trainer, an old friend named Luke Zolke, basically had to force feed him. The first Thor movie came out in 2011. It was a hit. Chris was suddenly a global superstar, but he didn't just want to be a superhero. In 2012, right after becoming an Avenger, he took a darker turn in Snow White and the Huntsman. He played the Huntsman, a gritty, drunken widow tasked with killing Kristen Stewart's Snow White. It was a huge departure from Shakespearean Thor. He had to lose that godlike bulk and get dirty. Filming was intense. In one scene, Kristen Stewart accidentally clocked Chris, but she immediately apologized afterwards. Chris was like, "No, why did you stop? That would have been the best take we would have had." This shows you the dedication he has for film. The movie was a massive financial success, proving Chris could open a blockbuster even without a cape. And by the time he got to Avengers Endgame and Thor Love and Thunder, he was making $20 million a movie. He did it. He fulfilled the promise he made to himself as a kid. One day, he called his dad and told him to look at his bank account. His dad looked, and all the debt was gone. The house was paid off. Chris said seeing that look on his parents' faces was the best moment of his life. But playing a superhero for a decade takes a toll. By 2013, after Thor: The Dark World, Chris was bored. He felt like the character was stiff and dull. He looked at his co-stars like Robert Downey Jr. and felt like they were the ones having all the fun. He described himself as feeling like a security guard for the team. He was just the big guy in the cape who hit things while everyone else got the good lines. He tried to break out of the box. In 2015, he starred in a movie called Black Hat. He played a genius computer hacker, and it was a disaster. People just couldn't buy Chris Hemsworth, the guy who looks like he benches Toyotas, sitting behind a keyboard typing code. The movie flopped hard. It made less than $20 million at the box office. Even the director later admitted the script wasn't ready. Chris was crushed. He felt like he hadn't stuck the landing. It reinforced the fear that maybe he was just a muscle guy. But then he took a risk that changed everything, and it might not be what you think. He got cast in the Ghostbusters reboot in 2016. He played the dumb receptionist. He showed up on set expecting a script, but the director told him, "We're just going to improvise." And Chris was terrified. He thought that he was going to ruin the movie, but it turned out he was hilarious.
Hemsworth is a huge comedic talent.
He started making up lines about his dog and wearing glasses with no lenses because he didn't want to clean them.
Oh, yeah, they just kept getting dirty, so I took them out. I don't have to clean them anymore.
Oh, boy.
He realized he could be funny. He realized he didn't have to be the stoic hero, and he took that energy back to Marvel. He went to the producers and said, "I'm bored. Thor needs a change." They hired a crazy director named Taika Waititi, and they tore everything down. In Thor Ragnarok, they cut his hair, they destroyed his hammer, they destroyed his home planet, and they let Chris be funny.
Yes! We know each other. He's a friend from work.
The movie was a massive success because it felt fresh. It saved the character and it proved that Chris was more than just a musclehead. Now, while he was crushing it in Marvel, he also wanted to prove he was a legitimate action star, not just a guy swinging at a tennis ball in front of a green screen. Enter Extraction in 2020. This was a gritty, brutal Netflix movie where he plays a mercenary rescuing a kid. The director, Sam Hargrave, was actually Chris Evans' stunt double in the Marvel movies, so they knew exactly how far they could push it, and they pushed it far. There is a sequence in that movie that is legendary. A 12-minute continuous shot where the camera never cuts. It looks like one seamless take of car chases, gunfights, and hand-to-hand combat. It was exhausting. Chris called it the most physically demanding thing that he has ever done. He wasn't flying on wires, he was rolling in the dirt, getting banged up for real. When the sequel, Extraction 2, came out, they upped the ante with a 21-minute one-shot scene where Chris's arm is literally set on fire while he's fighting. And he did that stunt himself. No CGI fire, real flames. That franchise became one of Netflix's biggest hits ever, cementing him as the Arnold Schwarzenegger of his generation. But sometimes you can go too far. In 2022, they released Thor: Love and Thunder. They leaned hard into the comedy. Maybe too hard, in fact, definitely too hard, according to the fans. The movie made money, but fans and critics were disappointed. They thought it was too silly. And even Chris admitted that later. He said, "I got caught up in the improv and the wackiness, and I became a parody of myself." He felt like they turned Thor into a clown. It was a harsh realization. He realized he owed the audience something better. While he was dealing with that creative struggle, he got hit with something much more real. He was filming a documentary series called Limitless. The show was about health and living longer. As part of the show, he took a genetic test. The results were supposed to be shared on camera, but the doctor called the producer and said, "I don't want to tell him this on camera." They took Chris aside and told him the news. He has 2 copies of the APOE4 gene. That probably doesn't mean much to you, but here is what it means for him. He is 8 to 10 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. His grandfather had it, and it was his biggest fear coming true. The news hit him like a truck, understandably so. He was staring his own mortality in the face. He realized that all the money and fame in the world couldn't stop his genetics. The media went crazy. Headlines started popping up saying Chris Hemsworth was retiring because of Alzheimer's. And that made him angry. He wasn't retiring, but he was waking up. He realized he had been sprinting for 20 years, trying to pay off that house and prove himself. And he had missed out on just being present. He decided to take a break. He went home to Australia to be with his wife, Elsa, and their 3 kids. He changed his life. He changed his workouts. He stopped lifting so heavy and started focusing on cardio and stillness. He started taking ice baths and meditating. He wasn't just building a body for a movie anymore. He was trying to build a brain that would last. But Chris didn't just stop at changing his own life. He decided to fight for his father's memories too. In a deeply personal documentary called A Road Trip to Remember, Chris takes his dad, Craig, who was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's, on a motorcycle journey across Australia. They revisited the places that shaped them, from their old family home in Melbourne to the rugged outback. It isn't just a holiday, it's a mission. They used something called reminiscence therapy, using familiar sights and sounds to keep his dad's mind connected to the past. Watching the God of Thunder break down simply because he wants his dad to remember him is a powerful reminder that some battles can't be won with a hammer. But he wasn't done acting. He needed a new challenge. He needed to get as far away from the hero role as possible. Enter George Miller and the Mad Max prequel, Furiosa. George Miller asked him to play the villain, Dementus. This wasn't a cool villain. This was a nasty, brutal, complicated warlord. Chris dove in. He wanted to be ugly. He wore a prosthetic nose that changed his profile completely. He said the nose helped him get out of the way of himself. He didn't see Chris Hemsworth in the mirror anymore. For the voice, he found inspiration in a weird place. Seagulls.
Something about that kind of sat in my head.
He was at the park with his kids, listening to seagulls fight over chips, and he thought their screechy, abrasive noise was perfect for Dementus. So the terrifying villain in Furiosa sounds like a seagull because of a day at the park. He also gave the character a teddy bear. Dementus carries it around on his chest throughout the movie. It's a dark detail. In the backstory Chris created, that bear belonged to his own children who died in the apocalypse. It starts the movie clean and gets dirtier and nastier as the film goes on, symbolizing his loss of humanity. It was a performance that reminded everyone that Chris Hemsworth is a real actor. He isn't just a prop. Throughout all of this, the fame, the money, the genetic scares, Chris has managed to stay surprisingly grounded. A lot of that comes down to his family. He met his wife, Elsa Pataki, in 2010. They didn't meet at a fancy party. They were introduced by their talent agent. They fell in love fast and got married just a few months later while on vacation. It was a whirlwind, but it stuck. And his kids were actually in Thor: Love and Thunder. His daughter, India, plays the character Love, the daughter of Gore the God Butcher, who becomes his daughter at the end. His twin sons, Sasha and Tristan, also have small roles, with playing a young Thor in the flashback sequence in the beginning, which is awesome to see. He also brings his cheery attitude on set from time to time. He once posted himself on Instagram drawing on multiple co-stars' posters, giving them fresh looks. And he is a bit of a kleptomaniac, as Chris has admitted to stealing props from the Marvel sets, specifically hammers. He has at least 5 of them in his house.
How many hammers do you have?
About 5.
5 hammers?
He tries to put them on display, like on the mantelpiece or in the bathroom, but his wife hates them. She keeps hiding them in cupboards, and he keeps bringing them back out. It's a little battle of wills in the Hemsworth household. And now, we are seeing that new perspective bleed into his most famous role. In one of the trailers for the upcoming Avengers Doomsday, Thor is back. But he isn't the jokester from Love and Thunder. He is sitting alone in a field, holding his axe, Stormbreaker, as he is praying to his father, Odin. He says, "Father, all my life I have answered every call. to honor, duty, to war. But now fate has given me something I never sought, a child, a life untouched by the storm. He asks for the strength to fight one last time so he can return to his daughter, not as a warrior, but as warmth. He says he wants to teach her not battle, but stillness, the kind I never knew. That word, stillness, it is the exact same thing Chris said he was searching for in his own life after that Alzheimer's scare. It's like the line between the man and the god has finally blurred completely. From a kid dodging buffalo in the outback to a man scrubbing breast pumps in a pharmacy, from a soap opera heartthrob to a global icon facing the reality of his own genetics, Chris Hemsworth's story is about more than just being strong. It's also about being vulnerable. It's about realizing that you can have all of the money and fame in the world, but the most important thing is the time you have with the people you love. He conquered Hollywood by looking like a god, but he stayed on top by proving he is just a human. He has been the hero, the clown, and the villain. And as he moves into the next phase of his career, with a new focus on his health and his family, one thing is clear. He has rewritten his own script. He isn't just the guy with the hammer anymore. He's the guy who built a life that, hopefully, he won't forget. But one thing's for sure, we won't forget. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the life of Chris Hemsworth, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe for more iconic stories. And let me know in the comments, do you prefer the serious Thor, the funny Thor, or are you ready to see him play more villains like Dementus? Thanks for watching, we'll catch you in the next one.